Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. Or should I say, Dream Warriors! Starring Heather Langenkamp, Patricia Arquette, Lawrence Fishburne, Priscilla Pointer, forgive me if I said that wrong, Craig Wasson, John Saxon, and Robert Englund, and directed by Chuck Russell. The Mask and the Scorpion King's Chuck Russell? Really? Well, it was the 80s. And and I have seen this maybe a couple of times in my life. Do I like it? Let's get into it. The movie opens with Kristen Parker, played by Patricia Arquette, making a craft at home as she falls asleep and her mother brings home a guy, which sounds unfortunate, but I like the arc of Kristen throughout the movie, as she dreams of Freddy Krueger returned by Robert Englund and his boiler room, and Freddy crashes Kristen and tries to kill her, but she wakes up to another dream where the sink crushes her hands and cuts her arm like she was committing suicide. And as an opening, I enjoy it. Max, played by Lawrence Fishburne, talks with Dr. Gordon as we're introduced to them, and Kristen gets violent, and Nancy Thompson, returned by Heather Langenkamp from the first film, comes in to calm her down, and that as an intern to help the criminally insane at a mental hospital called Weston Hills. Nancy meets Philip, who sleepwalks, Kane, who's quiet, Joey, who's in love with one of the nurses and doesn't talk. This comes back to characters I care about, but the acting is bad in this movie, like the first film. Meanwhile, Dr. Gordon looks up, and I can't believe I'm calling him that because I think of Saw every time. That looks up a pill to help from dreaming called Hypnocil, which will come back in a later movie. And I won't tell you, but Weston Hills does come back in the same movie in the future. But I do like this as a setup. We also meet Will, who had an accident from jumping. Jennifer, who wants to be a TV actress, and again, the acting is bad, but I care for the characters. Nancy asks Dr. Gordon to order some Hypnocil. Meanwhile, Freddy cuts and makes Philip sleepwalk like a puppet, which is a creative death for Philip. Dr. Gordon decides getting Hypnocil as Jennifer tries to stay up and watch TV for research reasons, and wants to stay up after Philip and Freddy is on the TV, and I'm thinking she's asleep, and Freddy kills her, and that was again a clever death. So far these deaths have been absolutely clever. I like the piano theme that was in the first film as the score in this movie. Nancy tells everyone about Freddy Krueger in group therapy, and Dr. Gordon shows everyone in psychological trick to make them sleep and dream for a moment or two. And Joey follows the nurse, and we find out it's a dream. And everyone has their imagination in their own dream, and we see it. Meanwhile, Joey kisses the nurse briefly, and as Joey figures out it's Freddy in Joey's dream as he dies, or so I'm led to believe, and the room in group therapy shrinks further and further, and another doctor catches everyone's asleep and gets Dr. Gordon and Nancy fired, and this movie starts to briefly slow down for me when we don't see Joey's death, even though I thought he was dead at the time, so please forgive me for that. And I get the impression he fell down into hell. Dr. Gordon visits a sister of a building nobody has been in for years and talks about Freddy, who was born in Nancy, as Nancy finds a message on Joey's body, and she, with Dr. Gordon, go to her father about where Freddy was buried, and he doesn't answer as Kristen tells the lady doctor she's killing everyone. And Dr. Gordon, as well as Nancy's father, go on a scavenger hunt as he puts some drug in the holy water and finds Freddy's bones while Nancy goes to Weston Hills to get the others out of the room. And they dream to stop Freddy and their own dreams and save Kristen. And Freddy starts to attack as Kristen dreams of her mother bringing her home another man. And Freddy cuts her mother's head off as the boyfriend, and they all attack Freddy with knives and avoiding the wheelchair and the knives. And a girl is killed. So does Will with the wheelchair. Kane calls Freddy and Nancy and Kristen, and they go to the boiler room. And keep in mind, I'm really entertained by all of this. They find Joey and Freddy, who almost kills Joey and saves his life, and they take a stab at Freddy and realize the children's souls are what make him stronger. Meanwhile, Nancy's father and Dr. Gordon fight a bony Freddy, which looked really cheap as they win, and Nancy and Kristen and Joey and Kane get sucked into mirrors. Joey shouting, "No!" saves Nancy, Kristen, and Kane, and it's all over until Freddy comes back, and Nancy comes back stabbing Freddy as she was stabbed for a second. And as a climax, it's again very entertaining and just a lot of fun. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 7.7 out of 10. Not as good as the first film, but better than the second film. I care for the characters, but the acting is pretty bad here. Overall, this is a very entertaining movie and a lot of fun to watch by the end of the day. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next week I will be back with Nightmare on Elm Street 4. And until next time, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.